Good afternoon and welcome to our interactive dialogue on Great Expectations. I thank past Presidents Flo, past Chairpersons Y Flo, fellow members, guests and friends from the media for joining us today. We have with us Dr. Shashi Tharoor, an elected member of the Indian Parliament from the Thiruvananthapuram constituency in Kerala, Minister of State, Ministry of Human Resource and Development, author, United Nations peacekeeper, refugee worker, human rights activist, one simultaneously straddles several worlds of experience. Ms. Vani Tripathi, National Secretary, BJP, actor by profession, politician by passion, and an activist bringing issues related to youth and women to the notice of various national and international forums. Quoting and summing Vani in her own words, "Whenever you're confronted with an opponent, conquer him with love." Namanji, principal guide and advisor Oneness Movement, an outstanding leader who is successfully transforming lives of thousands of Indians, propagating the inspiring vision of oneness by introducing genuine, innovative solutions for enhancing quality of life in social and corporate situations. Shri Naveen Jindal, Member of Parliament from the Kurukshetra constituency in Haryana, a crusader for the Indian national flag, an advocate for women and child rights, a philanthropist, a successful industrialist, and a sportsman par excellence. Ms. Fatima Karan, a senior anchor and producer for Network 18, who appears on both CNN, IBN, and CNBC TV 18. Ms. Fatima Karan will moderate today's session. Ms. Monica Malhotra Kandhari will not be able to join us today due to unavoidable circumstances. She sends her regrets. Today, we invite you to use this space for reflection, which has been provided to us to evaluate the benefits of equality and the full inclusion of women as drivers of development and to come up with relevant initiatives. A world where women make up less than 20% of the global decision makers is a world that is missing a huge opportunity for growth and ignoring an untapped reservoir of potential. Therefore, all world leaders are discussing forward-looking strategies for the advancement of women. Moreover, significant progress will depend on building strategic partnerships and involving all stakeholders in the efforts towards change on full and equal share in economic, social, cultural, and political decision-making. In today's global economy, where there are both markets of slow growth and rapid expansion, as well as continuing risks of economic recovery and financial stability, women represent a critical piece of the solution, both as an emerging market and an underutilized human resource. Addressing this issue is more than just about fairness. Inequality in gender empowerment also raises serious economic issues for countries at all stages of development and a considerable business challenge for all kinds of enterprises, particularly for those that value and rely on human skills and resources. Greater gender equality creates the potential for better, more informed decision making in our societies, an educated and diverse source of talent for private and public institutions, and role models who can be an inspiration to billions of women and men worldwide. We began the year with felicitating the past chairs of YFLO with Ms. Naina Lal Kidwai and continuing with our theme of Inspiring India with Dr. Sarika Pilot in August. I thank you all for being here, and I now hand over to Itiva Chopra, YFLO committee member, to introduce our keynote speaker for the day. Thank you.
We at YFLO have a small token of appreciation for each of our panelists. So may I please request Ms. Malvika Rai, President FLO, to present the token to Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Divya Suri Singh. It's my absolute pleasure today to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Minister of State, Ministry of Human Resource Development. an elected Member of Parliament, former Minister of State for External Affairs, and former Under Secretary General of the United Nations, Dr. Shashi Tharoor is the prize-winning author of 13 books, both fiction and non-fiction, out of which most recently was Pax India, India and the World of the 21st Century. A widely published critic, commentator, and columnist, Dr. Tharoor served the United Nations during his 29-year career in refugee work, peacekeeping, and the Secretary General's office, and heading communications and public information. In 2006, he was India's candidate to succeed Kofi Annan as UN Secretary General. He has won India's highest honor for an overseas Indians, the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman, and numerous literary awards, including a Commonwealth Writers' Prize. May I please request Dr. Tharoor to give his views on the changing trends in technology, society, demographic profiles.
Thank you very much, Anne, and the distinguished panelists, members of YFlow. Pleasure to see you all here this morning. I just suddenly realized that what you're expecting from me is sort of everything to do with everything in the world, and I'm not going to try and do that. But I'll touch on a couple of the aspects you mentioned, and certainly I was going to say a few things about education because I know that's of interest to all of you. And at the same time, it really is related to demography, because one of the reasons education is so important as a challenge to our country today is the fact that, as somebody reminded the country yesterday, but we've been saying for some time, 65% of India's population is under 35, 560 million of us are under 25, so this is already a very young country. But it's not just the fact that the numbers are so young, it's where we're headed. If you look at the age group from 10 to 19, you actually have 226 million. So we have an enormous number of people just about to grow up into the higher education system and or the workforce. And what this really means in practice is that we will have, for the next 30 or 40 years, a youthful, dynamic, working age population at a time when the rest of the world, including China, is actually aging. So just to give you a couple of numbers, right now our average age is 20 years. In 10 years' time, the average age in India will be 29. Okay, but Japan will be at 47, Europe will be at 46, the US will be at 40, and China will be heading towards 50. So we are in this extraordinarily unusual position. I was just reading the other day that even in terms of people of a working age, we will overtake China as early as 2020. It is said that by then we will have people in that work starting age of 20 to 24, we will have 116 million, the Chinese will be down to only 94 million. So we suddenly have this huge potential. You're, after all, a chapter of a business organization. So you are interested in industry, in production, in business. Well, what can we learn from this? We can learn from this that if we actually educate our young people, these young people whose numbers have been rattling off at you, and of course, when I say educate, I don't mean everyone goes out and gets a bachelor's degree. I mean either college or polytechnics or vocational training. If we can do all of that, if we can equip these young people to take advantage of what the 21st century has to offer us in India, then believe me, we will find that India will become the workhorse for the world, and of course we ourselves will grow dramatically. If we get it wrong, if we don't succeed in doing this, I'm afraid the dangers facing us are readily apparent in what has happened in 165 of our 629 districts, where young, unemployed, frustrated, unemployable young men have picked up the gun in the name of Maoism and Naxalism. So education is actually the single most important issue facing the country today. If we get it right, it transforms industry, business, economy, everything. If we get it wrong, it becomes a national security disaster. That's the vision with which I have approached my work in the Ministry of Human Resource Development since I was appointed to it at the end of October last year. We don't have a lot of time, certainly the lifetime of this parliament is only a year and a half. But what we're trying to do is to build upon and improve the narrative of Indian education that has characterized our 65 years since independence. People don't often realize the British left us with less than 17% literacy. In the 51 census, we found 17% literacy. It's about 16 when the British left in 47. Do you know that even there was a gender gap? Only 8.9% of Indian women could read and write in 1947. And from there, we've at least come to 74. I'm not proud of 74. There are many developing countries that have a higher rate of literacy than we do. But given how abysmal we were when we started, 74 is not too bad, but the gender gap sadly still persists. That 74 disguises 82.5% men are literate and only 65% of women are literate, which means that 1 out of every 3 Indian women still can't read and write, which is indeed a criminal shame for our society. Now, what have we done in terms of growth? School education, of course, has grown dramatically. The narrative of Indian education has been one of expansion, 4 E's really, if you like: expansion, equity, and I'll talk about each of the 4 E's in turn. Expansion is we went from not enough schools to educate our people to literally lakhs of schools. I don't have the number off the top of my head. We went from just having 400,000 Indians in higher education in 1947, in the entire country, in all universities and colleges, to 20 million today. We went from about 30 universities to 670 universities today. We went from about 700 colleges to about 35,000 colleges. So there's been already a massive expansion. The second E, as I mentioned, was equity, by which I mean including the excluded. You know, in our society there have been people who were denied education for reasons of gender, certainly, but also of birth, caste, religion, region, language, and we've tried to bring them all in. The RTE, which I know not everybody likes, the RTE is an exercise in trying to get everyone into school. Just a few years ago, I was the patron of the literacy campaign of the Frankfurt Book Fair. And I made a speech in which I had to admit that my own country had more out-of-school children than the rest of the world put together. All that has changed. We're down to below 3 million out-of-school children now. And in fact, there's something called the gross enrollment ratio, which is the percentage of a particular age group that's enrolled in that age-appropriate classes. So in primary education in India today, the gross enrollment ratio is 116%. In other words, we have actually enrolled more kids than we thought existed at that age group in the country. That's obviously some older kids are coming now into primary education. That's the good news, but the bad news is, by the time we get to class 8, it's dropped to 69% dropouts. By the time we get to class 11 and 12, it's dropped to 39%. And of course, at college right now, it's 18% against a global average in college of 29% enrollment. So we are not at all complacent. We know we have a long way to go. There's a great deal to be done. In the focus on expansion and equity, I think we have not been attentive enough to the third E, which is the E of excellence. Very frankly, we have some outstanding institutions. You all know a few, the IITs, the IIMs, my own alma mater, St. Stephen's. Naveen has set up a university that hopes to reach that level and seems to be very much on course. But these are islands of excellence in the sea of mediocrity. There is no question that the average Indian university graduate has not come out with an excellent education. Which is what leads me to the fourth E, which is employability. Your own organization, FICCI, has done a survey showing that 64% of employers are not satisfied with the quality of the graduates who come to them for jobs. There's another survey, I don't think it's ASSOCHAM, there is another survey which puts the figure even higher. I've had conversations with CEOs telling me exactly the same thing. That once they get beyond the elite institutions, they find that the quality of the graduates available in the job market, even in subjects like engineering and technical education, sciences, simply not up to scratch. And that's why a company like Infosys has created a gigantic university campus in Mysore to educate the people they've already hired. This is not on-the-job training, which all your businesses, I'm sure, are doing in any case. This is actually a year of education to make up for the deficiencies of the education they've had before they've come to be hired by these companies. That's the situation we're facing in our country right now. So we need to improve both excellence and employability. We need to see much more interface between the business world, your world, and the academic world. I'd like to see, for example, universities collaborating with institutions for research purposes, creating more research clusters. Mr. Modi mentioned in his speech yesterday that there are no Indian universities in the top 200. He's right. Now, there is one particular reason for that. The rankings give an enormous amount of weightage to research. And Indian universities, by and large, are teaching universities, not research universities. We do overwhelmingly we focus on teaching, and we do research in smaller institutions that don't have much teaching, and so we don't have that weightage. Times Higher Education, for example, gives 30% weighting for research and 30% weighting for citations of research, which means that 60% weighting you're already dropping off the radar screen by the time other universities come up. We're changing that. We're funding more research in the universities. We want businesses to fund more research in the universities. We're encouraging creation of research clusters in universities. And on top of that, we're also trying to do something important if the parliament will ever be allowed to function by Vani's people. And we'll actually have some bills being discussed and passed. Then one of the bills we have pending is a bill for innovation. Universities for innovation and research. 14 universities will be created under that bill in both the public sector and the private sector and in joint PPP partnership, which will be devoted exclusively for innovation and research, which will have all the autonomy they want to run their own rules, pay their own salaries, decide their own research priorities. So this is a huge challenge in front of us, but as I said, our parliament is so dysfunctional these days, thanks to you-know-who, that we don't actually have any opportunity to discuss bills and pass them. And so this is one of the 11 bills in the higher education sector that are still pending. But I just want to say, this is the way in which we want to head. And frankly, vocational training is another important area. Skill development is not entirely under my ministry. It's in fact mainly under the Ministry of Labour and Employment, and now the government is creating a national skill development agency to pull together all the different ministries that have bits and pieces of the skill development puzzle. We only get involved when it comes to skill development classes in educational institutions. For example, Mr. Ramudarai, the Prime Minister's advisor on skill development, is trying to get some vocational and skill development classes into the higher secondary system. He's trying it out on a pilot basis in 3 states. There are my ministries involved with it. Otherwise, we're not. So I can't say much about it except to say that one of the great problems in our country, in my view, a social problem, is that for 3,000 years, if you wanted to be a carpenter or a cobbler, you'd better have a dad or an uncle who's a carpenter or a cobbler because nobody else is going to teach you. All our professional skills have been passed on from generation to generation. That's the origin of the caste system. And clearly in the 21st century, that is holding us back as a society. We need to be able to take, there might be the son of a professor who's very good with his hands. He might want to be a welder or an auto mechanic or a plumber. There's no shame in that in other societies. In our society, there's no way he can go and learn that. He may go off and become a rather mediocre teacher instead. Why don't we try and open up the space much more, including to the private sector? I remember, I won't name him, but a very prominent industrialist telling me about 4 years ago he was planning to establish 500 vocational training centers across the country. Wonder what happened to his idea? I haven't seen one. I don't understand why our business community is not doing more to actually come up with this kind of thing. Vocational training, it'll also enhance your employment pool. It'll also make it easier for you to get somebody with some training when your leaky faucet wants to be fixed or your electricity breaks down. We need to be able to do this. Why is it in the country of 1.2 billion people that we have a nationwide shortage of masons, for example? All the certified ones have gone off to the Gulf, very honestly. So we need to do some very serious work in vocational training. But if we get all this right, that's the exciting thing about it. We will actually transform ourselves and we'll transform the world, because many countries in the world are going to face the very unusual problem of having far more pensioners than working age people. And including China, we'll get to that. China's already facing, because of their one-child policy, they're facing a problem of one child supporting 4 grandparents. And that's going to be a lot of fun for that one child as he hits sending his kids to college age. But I'm just saying that when these countries are finding themselves in this demographic funnel, what are they going to do? They're going to turn to countries like us for skilled labor. We can provide that skilled labor, provided we've actually skilled them, provided we've actually trained them and educated them. So this is I wanted to give you a vision of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. I know that Garima also wanted to talk about technology. The only thing we're doing with technology and education is building through Sam Petroda's mission the National Knowledge Network, which will connect all our institutions of higher education on a broadband network. There's still some issues of last mile connectivity on many campuses. We're not fully there yet. And then what we're going to try and do is use much more video conferencing, much more of these online courses to try and get the benefits of, say, a professor sitting in some swank university in Delhi or Chennai actually reaching some student in Bundelkhand University in Jhansi through these means. So we are trying to use technology to spread the quality of the knowledge and the instruction available to our students across the country. I was supposed to take 10 minutes. I think I've already crossed that. Also agreed to answer a few questions before I go. Unfortunately, I'm overwhelmed at the moment with my schedule for today, so I will not be able to linger for the rest of the discussion. But I just want to paint this very basic picture for you. There's plenty more I can address, and if you have questions or comments either about what I've said or what I've not said, I'd be delighted to answer them until the organizers tell me we've run out of time. Thank you very much. Jai. Please tell me who you are so I know sort of what. Sorry, there's a mic coming to you. The others won't be able to.
Hi, I'm Amy Sahai, member of GLOW. What you have already told us, we knew that these are the problems. But you haven't told us what steps exactly are you going to take to solve them. At this time, we have schools which are only on paper. There are no actual schools, but the salaries are paid to the teachers, and we don't know who gets that money. And there are, that is what we hear in the media.
That surprises me. You see, the thing is, if you're referring to the government school system, the government school system is under the state governments. What we're doing in the center is pumping in a lot more money. There was some discussion of percentage of GDP. We started off 9 years ago in this government with just 3% of our GDP being spent on education. We have gone from there to now about 4.8% of a much larger GDP. So we're spending more money. Where is this money going? Almost all of it is going to the state governments, because education is a system is a subject on the concurrent list of the Constitution. So the state governments are running the government schools in their states. We're giving them lots of money under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. We're trying to give them certain standards. We're trying to improve quality, both in terms of the infrastructure, so that schools have the basic facilities, including toilets. And you know how important that is, because frankly, particularly for girl students, one of the major reasons for dropouts, after a certain age, they can't go to a private place and change, they go home. And if they go home and home is not nearby, they won't come back. And that's one of the reasons we have severe problems in terms of dropout rates. Because we've insisted on paying for girls' toilets. And then when it comes to quality of teachers, we're insisting on in-service training. We've tried to supply additional resources at the district levels. There's a district instructional system there where we actually train teachers. So things are happening. We still have the world record for teacher absenteeism. I don't want to pretend that everything is perfect.
Is somebody checking that these things are being done?
I'm sorry?
Is it being checked that these things are being done?
Well,
by the
that
state
unfortunately
government?
or otherwise
Somebody's pocketing the money.
is the duty of each state government. Because under our constitution, we cannot go and inspect that. The state government has to, and some states are definitely better than others at how they monitor, how they supervise, how they train, how they ensure there's less absenteeism. Absenteeism is a genuine problem, and it's particularly bad in some of the worst affected states, where teachers are collecting salaries and not showing up, something in the order of 25% in some places.
No, but if the federal government is giving money, don't they want to see how it is going to be?
Yes. So what we're doing is, there are many mechanisms for doing this. One is, of course, to hold the state governments accountable, get more information from them. Whenever we get information about things not working, whether it's the midday meal scheme, which is one way we thought of keeping kids in school is giving them a nutritious meal. whether that scheme is not working well or there's any cheating or fraud or poor quality food, we get reports, we'll send them to the states and say, please investigate. The states have to do that. Similarly with all these matters, with teachers and everything else, we do require the states to investigate. We also have a central network, the Kendriya Vidyalayas, the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas, the Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas. We have a number of central institutions as well. And of course, many people who are not happy with the state government schools are trying to flock to these. The admission rate of these schools is much lower than 1% of applicants because of the sheer demand for a limited number of spaces in these central schools. But nonetheless, we can't tamper with the constitution. State governments will not agree. We have to leave the onus on them to try and do a bit more to follow up on this.
Hi, Mr.
Mr. Tharoor,
My name is Gaurav and I'm from Mint newspaper.
So you're from?
Mint.
Yeah.
So my question is, how would you address the irony that the Right to Education Act is going to throw out a lot of low-fee private schools out of business who are providing a very good quality of education, if not higher, at least at par with the government schools?
Well, this is a very tough question. Look, I wasn't in the ministry when the terms of the RTE Act were written. They are the law of the land. The fact is that there are many schools that are not in compliance. We in the ministry have not been cracking the whip. We merely left it to the states. You see, the RTE imposes obligations on the states to ensure that schools under its jurisdiction in each state comply. So it will vary from state. The state is supposed to go and inspect. If the state feels that there is a case for a valid exemption, we'll have to see how that's done. In some cases, schools are in the course of complying. I mean, one common sense thing, for example, is that schools are meant to have playgrounds, right? So there are some schools that don't have playgrounds. If they're otherwise good schools, would we have to close the school under RTE because they don't have a playground? No, they can just demonstrate that their children have access to a playground, a municipal playground, or a playground in some factory, or a playground in some other school, on some agreed terms. So children have a chance to run around and express themselves, and then I'm sure that we will consider. No one is going to be unimaginative enough to close a school for a technical reason. I think the Act may have been a little too stringent the way it was written in not giving the states a little more explicit flexibility. But there can be sensible flexibility in the implementation.
Like case in point, they have this clause that the teachers would be paid a salary according to 6th pay commission.
Yeah.
When the school itself is only charging 200 or 300 rupees from a pupil in a class of 30. So he's earning 9,000 rupees and he has to pay the teacher 25,000. How is it like logically ever possible?
Well, some of those things, I don't think there's an obvious mathematical answer to it. Obviously, if the law says you've got to pay X salary, you've got to pay X salary. Otherwise, the teacher would have the right to go to court and say, I'm not being paid the promised salary I promised.
But don't you think that it's
But why weren't these questions raised when the law was written in 2009? Why, after 4 years, are we now raising these questions? Look,
so many
every
schools
law
are
in our
not
country...
and you are the one who says that so and so things should be done. You have a vision, and this particular law is coming in the way of your vision. So what are you going to do to address that?
I think we have already asked the states to give us reports on their experience of the implementation of the RTE, coming towards the end of the deadline specified in the Act. Again, the deadline of the end of March this year was written into the Act. Then suddenly everyone has woken up saying the deadline has expired and many schools have not complied. That's what lies behind all of this.
I think we're going to have to move on to some of the other
Thank you.
questions. I understand that you have very
Sure,
limited
but the
time.
states in any case will come to us with their reports, and once they do, then we will have an opportunity to see whether the law needs amending. But again, Parliament has to function to be able to do that. Until then, we have to make things work with the law we have.
Thanks.
Any other questions from you?
Somebody with a mic, I think, will probably be. Maybe you could get the mic after.
My name is Navita Gupta and I'm a past president of law. I'm also involved in vocational training because under the Public-Private Partnership Ministry of Labour, we have adopted an ITI.
Great.
So I'm working at the grassroots level, and that's why I may be authorized to say that we have talked of numbers, but what about the quality? Because in the ITIs we are getting 10th class or 12th class pass girls from Delhi schools, and the quality is so bad they cannot even write a sentence in Hindi properly. Forget about English. I would say Ministry of Labour has done better than the Ministry of HR because they have involved the industry who are the stakeholders in this girls who are coming. It's an all girls ITI and there are 600 students there. Beautiful infrastructure, dismal teachers and students, I believe every student was good provided their training. Flo is involved in imparting English communication to them where if they have to work in an industry in Delhi, they need to know English and they just don't know anything. So my question is that why is Ministry of HR not involving the private parties into the basic education, primary education? You can begin with at least the governments where Congress is ruling. If it is a state matter, but and the schools have, the infrastructure, because when we go to vote, we go to these schools, tremendous infrastructure, but
no quality is what you're talking about.
that is
Really of accountability and also greater inclusion.
No, the question of policy has been fundamentally
and
weak.
one more suggestion that when you are taking skill development, please also include entrepreneurship.
Include, sorry?
Entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship, yes,
Because
of course.
that is another E that we should have.
No, I'm very much, in fact, in favor of that. And in my own constituency, I've helped launch a couple of programs. One called I Am an Entrepreneur, with an incubating cell in our Technopark in Thiruvananthapuram. It's working. Obviously, we need a nationwide effort for all of these things. On your question of quality, though, it's fundamental. If somebody comes out with a 12th or 10th pass and can't write a sentence in Hindi, then they shouldn't have passed. There's something really wrong. And it may go with the quality of the teaching, it may go with the quality of the examination corrections. I don't know. I suspect that your examples suffer from the risk of overgeneralizing from some bad examples. I don't know. I've also met some very bright products of the Delhi school system who seem to be very, very able and well spoken. But the fact, and I'm not asking them to write a sentence in Hindi, but clearly they can. But at the same time, I understand what you're saying, that we are producing too many people from our school system who may be nominally literate, perhaps they can write their names or whatever, but who are really not able to function effectively in a literate society. And if we want to create a knowledge society in the 21st century, we have to get all that right. I don't think any one of us has a magic wand. What we're going to have to do is to get improvements across the board in teacher quality. We've now got a teacher eligibility test, so not anybody can just go and teach. They have to have some quality themselves. We are trying to insist on in-service training so they improve before they get promoted to teaching other students. But I would not disagree with you. You say there are kids coming out who are not doing well. The levels are low, but there's been gradual improvement. For example, there's been a survey, a national assessment survey, which has said that it's pathetic. There's something like 48%, I think, of children in the 5th standard can read and write a 2nd standard text. But the good news is that 5 years ago it was 41%. So it's actually been improving. That's the...
But those are still dismal figures. In fact, I just want to bring in something on what Ms. Gautam had talked about earlier. You talked about private participation and how you feel the government itself is also not perhaps open to that at this stage. I was just speaking to Mr. Jindal just a minute ago because I understand that they've taken a few initiatives as well. Have you found any kind of resistance when you've tried to take on these initiatives itself?
Yeah, from our experience in Haryana, the teacher unions would oppose that. So, so for this also, whatever Mr. Tharoor is saying, you see, center can make its efforts, and obviously right to education is a very big step. But obviously a lot more needs to be done, a lot of things need to be changed. But it is, the government alone cannot do everything. Society, people, everyone has to play their role. In terms of quality, like right to education also, you can't stop a child in a class, even if they know nothing. They have to necessarily be passed on to another class. So I personally do feel that whatever our experiences are after implementation of right to education, we have learned from those experiences and keep on amending the act so that quality does improve, because quality in education is everything.
But the accountability and the quality issue is something that we're hearing once again, even when this discussion fell You're talking about accountability, you're talking about tracking what is really happening on the ground and how you can actually improve those mechanisms. So, as someone who's talking about how we are trying to put these measures in place, we are really focusing on the kind of frustrations we're seeing in this.
True.
So, what are those sort of game-changing initiatives that are really going to work? Because as you're saying, of course, the law is something that's organic, it keeps changing, there's participation that's involved as well. But, what is it that's really going to work? Because it's pretty scary when someone sits up and says that, in 10th grade.
So what we're doing is we're encouraging academics to do detailed studies, research studies, on how we can improve learning outcomes. So there's a fellow called Professor Kirti Muralidharan from Harvard University, who's been doing a very detailed study of children in classes 2 to 5, I think, if I remember correctly, in a district in Andhra Pradesh. And the methods, they're trying different interventions and showing which interventions have the biggest impact on learning outcomes. They came and did a presentation for Mr. Pallam Raju and myself not long ago. We're hoping very much to wait for the outcome of that thing and then try and steer some of these into the classrooms across the country, provided the states are willing to implement these insights that we learn. One of the things he's saying, for example, is maybe we need more teaching assistants in the classrooms. Rather than an absolutely larger number of teachers, just more assistants who have enough skills to be able to help the kids overcome it. Because of course, a classroom of 40 kids, you have such uneven learning patterns and learning abilities. You need to be able to, that's one insight, there's many more coming. But we are trying all of these things. Frankly, this will take time, but at the same time, to be aware of the problem is the first step. Shall that be the last question, perhaps? Yeah.
Part of the growth now, the way we need to move. You also talked about education, and the quality of education is something we've been debating about all this morning. What is somebody like you in your position who says education is my area, skill development is somebody else's, but that little bit of skill development that just falls in my part is only what I know about. I think we should start looking at the whole thing in a very, very larger, holistic, in a integrated manner, because that is really the key to being able to grow the way you're talking about. You're talking about a vision, you're talking about the understanding of the fact that you understand the importance of skill development. At the same time, you're withdrawing yourself saying, hey, listen, that's not my department and my division. I think guys like you, with your personality, your strengths, your position, you should just drive this forward. We're really looking forward to somebody like you to take it forward.
Okay, I should apply for you have to understand in a system of government, each ministry has its own responsibility, and it would not be appropriate for a minister in one area to interfere with the work of another ministry. But having said that, that's precisely why the Prime Minister has moved to create a national skill development agency which will pull all the ministries together. So my ministry will still have to be restricted to the inputs where it comes to the school system. For example, getting vocational classes into class 9, 10, 11, 12 will be very, very good. Because those kids who are already struggling academically will find a new option. And I certainly feel we need to do more of that, because if we don't catch them while they're still in school, they might drop out of school and then we'll never catch them. So let's introduce the vocational training possibility already from 9, 10, 11 and 12. So they have the exposure to it before they drop out of conventional school. But having said that, we will do our part, but other ministries will do the other part, and the National Skill Development Agency will pull it all together, be a coordinating mechanism and make it work. That's the hope. And certainly I'm so encouraged to hear that Namita has got an ITI, which is a good facility, state-of-the-art tools and so on, because one of the concerns has been that many of the ITIs are using old equipment, disused machinery, it's all dust and scrap everywhere, and students are not learning anything useful. So if I know that this is actually not true, that's a good argument to use. We must get students coming out with certificates in useful 21st century skills. Sorry I've got to go. It's been such a pleasure seeing you all, and I think I'll be back to Flow in December, right? So we'll have a second bite of the cherry there. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.
I think we've of course been talking about education so far, but just in terms of representation and what that really means, does that really translate to women's empowerment? I would like Ms. Vani Tripathi to say what she would like about this right now.
Well, I think I'm definitely going to address the issue as I speak, because women inclusion, when we talk about inclusiveness and inclusivity including women, per se in society and nation building. Education is a very intrinsic part of it. And what I wanted Dr. Tharoor, who I do speak to, even otherwise, because I think he's one of the most approachable, ministers of the government, also a personal friend, is that nothing is being done as far as women's education in the country is concerned. And it's not a gender equal or an unequal situation. When I say women's education, the necessity level of leveraging the position of creating empowerment for women in the country is very important. And it's not just in terms of creating leadership for them. Either we do capacity building work which only leads to leadership, Fatima, or it just gets contained at the primary school level where girl child education is at the focus, also given the robust federal democracy that we are. But there's a huge wide gaping hole in the middle, and that really needs to be addressed. And I think that itself will create more inclusiveness in women's education per se. Again, I'm underlining not just colleges, which are women colleges, not just universities. The fact that it has to be a cohesive, convergent approach to looking at education and how involving women in them is very much a part of it. Another big statistic which Dr. Tharoor was talking about, if 60% of India is under 40 between this year and the next, 50% of that is women. So are we doing enough policy making to understand that convergence level which is required for women? I think that itself will be a very tall order, and I hope the Ministry of HRD, given all the sort of the challenges that it has, which Dr. Tharoor brought out in his address, will be able to comply.
Okay, so that basically is bringing out that question of whether political representation, how far can it really go in terms of bringing out those concerns that those constituents have. You've of course done a lot of work on the ground as well. So just tell us, some of the observations you've had. You've talked about how you've seen leadership really come through within rural settings as well. How does someone like you see education being a transformer versus this kind of social and cultural norms that you perhaps see changing on the ground and bringing out the leadership of women in some of the places?
I'll start with the Urdu couplet. I read this long ago, and it sounds very provocative. But it really encapsulates how we've hidden our magnificent women all over the country. It goes like, Kab tak chupegi keri patton ki aad mein. Keri is the little green mango that you and I eat chutneys of, and of course all the women who like pickles here, those little lovely sour pickles are made out of it. Kab tak chupegi keri patton ki aad mein, ek din to jat bikegi wo sare-a bazaar mein. And the bazaar word here is not really the marketplace. I think the biggest challenge that we face as far as women and the leadership today is concerned is the fact that we have not been able to get inclusive as far as leadership for women is concerned. And then it's a little story in Bihar. During one of the panchayat elections, I was actually going and conversing, for the party. And we were in an alliance with the JDU at that time, which we are not right now. And this was probably the remotest district of an interior town in Bihar called the Dadar Kolua. Why I never forget the village is because this fantastic sarpanch of the village sitting there, Amita Devi, was one person who is just stuck in my memory forever, and this happened a couple of years ago. The story of Amita Devi is actually the story of what leadership, inclusiveness, creating women, creating a situation for women and mainstreaming them is. Amita Devi 6 months ago was a woman who was in a veil and had probably not met more than 4 men in her life and had to be chaperoned outside her village hut to even go to the bazaar or the hart, which used to happen every Thursday in the village. And here, as people were getting together under a peepal tree for this address of Amita Devi, the woman sarpanch, who was fighting an election for the second time, she was addressing a rally of 1,500 people, both men and women. And I think that was where I saw change happen. And I have to grant it to the 90s, where we took a policy decision. It was provocative, it was controversial, to give 33% reservation to women in the village sector, panchayat units of the country. It was provocative because all kinds of questions were raised. Panchpati was a term which was coined, that the sons and the husbands and the nephews and so on and so forth of these women sarpanchs, if elected, will be the ones who will be ruling on their behalf. But to our surprise and to our grand surprise, a study happened 15 years henceforth. Each time a woman became a village head of a panchayat somewhere in Bihar or in UP or in Madhya Pradesh or down south, she was not once, not twice, but thrice assured of becoming a sarpanch again. And that was the change where a popularly elected village representative who was a woman, minus the gender, was elected again and again and again by the community, by the village, by the sarpanch or the panchayat of that village. Why this is a change making, or why this becomes for me a metaphor for change in women leadership is because quotas and reservation is a question which has been constantly debated. But I must sort of do a comparative paradigm as to what reservation in a country like Pakistan means and what reservation in India means. Pakistan, there are women reserved seats in the parliament, in the in the assemblies where speaker of the assemblies are women, but they are nominated seats. In India, each time a seat is reserved for a woman, it becomes very challenging because she is contesting elections and not getting nominated. And if I were to tomorrow contest a seat where it's a reserved seat for a woman, it would be that I would be faced with 6, 7, 8, 10 women candidates from other political parties, and gender will no more remain an issue. So Fatima, to begin with, we have to shed off this baggage of gender equity, inequity, equality, inequality in our own heads. And when I say in our own heads, sitting in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad, we think this is what women should do. We are nobody to address it. Why? Because change is happening outside the big urban cities of the country. Change is happening in small villages. Women being intrinsic community leaders, being natural, supporters of the community they belong to, they know whose child is not going to school. And Dr. Tharoor was talking about education. They know which village elder is sick. They intrinsically know that where, if the hospital is not functioning, a small distance. And again, coming to Amita Devi, today, 15 years later, I'm in Amita Devi again, a couple of months ago. And what does she talk about today? She talks about land acquisition. Right. She talks about agrarian economics in her own. She talks about feeding and looking at the unlanded poor, that is the patta system, which is such a huge. And 15 years later, she has just blossomed into this beautiful leader who never went to a training school, never went to a leadership institute. Everything that she done was from the brass tacks and the grassroots of the country. Right. And the community itself became
I understand that women have a tendency to really be nurturing. They understand leadership. They understand what's happening on a grassroots level. But this argument which you're making about equity and gender, I don't think it can be largely ignored as well. I understand on one hand about empowerment, understanding that perhaps we should look at equity in a different position altogether. But I just want to turn to the person who's sitting next to me, and Naveen Jindal. On one hand, I understand that you've tried to do a lot of work, social work in terms of women's empowerment, but unfortunately when we talk about, for example, Haryana, we cannot ignore the sort of incredible discrimination we've seen for women, how there continues to be a very large-scale amount of sexual violence against women. So I'm talking about, on one hand, you've got politicians talking about change and what's happening on the grassroots level, but on the other hand, there are women, for example, and they're just one example, who have to deal with a lot of social resistance, a lot of social violence as well, and perhaps even just a feeling as to how much they can participate in the social process. So what do you have to say about that? Because on one hand you can mobilize women, but really at the end of the day, is life really getting better for them?
Okay, Fatima, speaking for Haryana, I would say that obviously these kind of incidents against women happen all over the country. It's very unfortunate. Yeah, it's very unfortunate. It happens. But that's a fact of life. These things happen. So, but Haryana, I would say, women are not, women are sufficiently empowered in Haryana. All these schemes about in Haryana, at the panchayat level, there is 50% reservation for women. Not only at the village level, but the block Jilla Parishad. But these issues, like a lot of places, she said Panchpati. So a lot of time I actually refer to them as Sarpanchpati, because after reservation, the guy could, so he gets his wife to contest. And a lot of times I make sure, and I didn't know this, I learned this from Mr. Manishankar Iyer, because he used to take a lot of interest in any village that he would go to. So once I traveled with him in Mewat region, so he would ensure that he calls the actual Sarpanch. Because sometimes people will say, कि सरपंच आप हो, हाँ जी सरपंच मैं हूँ. तो फिर आप हो कि आपकी वाइफ है, बोले जी वाइफ है. वाइफ कहाँ है? बोले जी घर पे है. क्यों घर पे है? बोले तबीयत ठीक नहीं है. So now everywhere we go, we try to ensure, even in meetings which the administration would call, sometimes just men used to go. So we make an effort. So it takes time to make an effort. So obviously slowly these things are happening. And as far as, but it has to start from early age, and that starts with education. So for educating, firstly that there should be no female feticide. We have various schemes. We have a Ladli scheme where we give a lot of money. We also, in Haryana, we are also giving a lot of scholarships to the girl child, especially to the girl child. So the people are encouraged to send their girls to school. And then also all the time as leaders, not only what we scheme, but also what we say, what we do. We always say that, when we educate a girl child, then two families get educated. Her parents and also where she gets married. And we also know from my experience that only educated woman is also able to practice family planning. So all these things are happening, but obviously they're happening slowly.
Naveenji,
Sure.
I'm sorry I'm butting in. There is a very large question as far as Haryana is concerned. And I think that is probably taken the whole mind share of the country, which has been happening for so many years, is the Khap Panchayat issue. And the Khap Panchayat itself, also by women bodies. And one thing I want to make it very clear that I do not belong to a school of thought that you have to hate men to empower women. Because this is a yin and yang story. This is a yin and yang story. And it's not just that men are all bad and that's how we'll empower women and that's how women will go forward. Policy making still remains only 10% of the parliament is women. But how do we look at this? Because this becomes probably one of the labyrinth of the most unempowered situation and the most atrociously violent situation as far as women is concerned.
So who is supporting the wrongdoings of a Khap Panchayat? So if Khap Panchayats are there and who do something illegal or say something illegal, they have been facing the law. Their action has been, very strict action has been taken against them. So who's supporting? And as far as people's views are concerned, not everything, Khap Panchayats are civil societies at the village level. So they do good things also, they do wrong things also. When they do wrong things or when they have taken action or when they have done something wrong, they have faced the music, they have faced, they've been acted.
Looking at the Constitution of India with a rule of law, with a constitution that gives equality of status and it's gender equal, it gives you that kind of resolve that anybody who's violated against whether a man or a woman will be treated equally in the eyes of the law.
Of course.
Then to have something like a vigilante justice, or then to have a situation where a whole panchayat gets together and actually is doing a ruling against whether it's the same Gotra marriages, whether it is women they have to dress, how many times they are allowed or not allowed to get outside the house, and also education, whether they can educate themselves. I think these are very deeply disturbing questions.
All sorts of people do all sorts of, but any time any such diktat has been given, the government has acted against them. So nobody in the government, nobody is supporting the wrongdoings of any Khap Panchayat, whether it's in Haryana or it's in UP.
We've heard parts of this debate earlier because I remember even on my own channel we sort of really went after Naveen because he unfortunately looked like he was sort of tolerating parts of
No, one second, Fatima, look like because thanks to the media. If my constituency, we are all the time ready to speak to terrorist organizations. Yes or no? So if there's a Khap Panchayat who says that you are a public representative, this is our charter, this is what we want you to take to the government, I will talk to them, I will listen to them. Just my talking to someone is one thing, acting upon it is another thing. So I have to listen whether somebody makes a fair demand or an unfair demand. I have to listen to them. After listening to them, what has happened? You know, if it is someone's culture, it is a culture in Haryana, in Punjab, probably many of your families, that you don't marry in the same gotra. If somebody does not want to marry his cousins, that is their prerogative. In the South India and in many cultures, many religions, people marry their first cousins. That is their culture. So we are nobody to say about these things. But any time anybody has taken law in their own hands, you know, they have been punished. They are behind bars.
For that extreme situation, anyhow, I don't want to get this into a conversation about panchayats. And I mean, we're talking about suppression, women's empowerment, education, so on and so forth. Unfortunately, there are cultural realities in this country that we don't necessarily really know how to get around at this stage. Before I open up the floor once again, because I'd really like this to be as interactive as possible, you know, we've talked about external factors that are inhibitors for women and perhaps the kind of ways that they can get around them. But we also have on our panel Mr. Namaji, who's the principal advisor for Oneness, and he's actually here to talk about some of the internal factors that he thinks are relevant in terms of taking women forward, and that's women from all walks of life. So I just want to give him 5 minutes to just say his bit, and perhaps we can then just get this discussion going once again.
Well, I have been listening to the whole conversation, and we have been discussing a lot about how we can empower women or whatever way we want to administer. But then I also want to give another angle to the whole thing, that is the internal world, as Fatima ji mentioned just now. Now, a person has to be empowered within. Then automatically everything else happens outside. Because, for example, if you take any institution, for example, Mrs. Gautam, she mentioned about a school which she has started. Definitely it started with a vision. So the vision is very important, and more than the vision is the intent. So if the intent is strong and deep and it is potent with power, then naturally everything else falls in place. Because the law says, if you are focused, things will fall in place. You don't have to do anything much, things will happen. Because the external world is a reflection of the internal world. If you are very strong within, then you will get the right kind of people, you will get the right kind of laws, the right kind of ideas. For example, this country got independence because of Sri Mahatma Gandhi. Now, Mahatma Gandhi ji was very, very clear. All the great visionaries, they don't see that it's not going to happen. They already see that it's already over. So that's the spirit which I think every woman has to have. I don't want to restrict only to women, but also to every human. Because every human has that power. Unfortunately, we are not able to focus, or we are not able to address that particular power which we already have. So, and then in particular to the women, we always say that we have to be empowered, women empowerment, and then respecting women. Now, I'm from the Oneness University and our founders are Sri Amma Bhagwan. So Sri Bhagwan says, respect women, and you will receive my grace immediately. So, I think that must make you feel very nice. Because normally in India, we have this principle, Ghar ka Lakshmi hoti hai. And if women is respected, the woman is respected, money comes in, finances come in, and then obstacles are cleared, things happen. So, when I say respect women, please don't understand that it's only the men who have to respect women. You have to respect yourselves. So, most of the time you see that, many women, in India particularly, we feel that, I'm a woman, I'm a female. So, you actually don't respect, and then you demand respect. Why do you demand respect? Because you don't respect yourself. If a person respects himself or herself, will he need any respect from anybody else? If you love yourself, then would you expect love from anybody else? You don't. And what do you not love yourself? What in you don't like? Your physical bodies you don't like because you are heavy, weight, then hair is not alright, eyes are not alright, eyelashes are not alright. Well, I am not telling that you should beautify yourself, but I don't say that you should not buy nice jewelry. You could do all that. We have nothing to do with that. But then what is important is that do you love yourself or not? Ask yourself this question.
That's, I think, a question that every woman.
I was ask Namanji something. Namanji, you're of course talking about the core ethos of the culture that we are, and whatever religion we may belong to. The core ethos of being Indian is, of course, respect and trust and all these lovely things. But I, over the years, being both a professional and a politician, I have come to a conclusion that men are taught to apologize for their weaknesses, but women are taught to apologize for their strengths. And it's always that I'm beautiful, I'm gorgeous. Should I be beautiful? Should I be gorgeous? Should I wear nice clothes? Apology for being who you are. And when you talk about the truth of life and the love of life and the love of the being, why should one be apologetic when, if you really are that one being and that one whole, why is it that these fragmentations occur and women are made to go through the journey that they do all their lives?
Lack of spiritual education.
No, on whose behalf? 1 minute.
Lack of spiritual education. There is no point arguing on who is right and who is wrong. We have to see what is wrong.
But are you saying that then women by themselves should be spiritually enlightened in the sense that they should be willing to deal with this kind of resistance? Because what she's talking about is that journey, the difficult journey that many women have to make, which is trying to acknowledge who they are, also look at all sorts of other ways in which they are stopped by society. And you're saying that it's not just about women, it's not just about men. Women have to love themselves, but it's not easy for that to really happen in reality. So the spiritual fulfillment that you talk about, where should that be coming from? Personal?
Yeah, when I said spiritual education, I mean, let us take one principle, that you are unique. Now, how many of us feel that we are unique? Because you just think about it, there is nobody who is like you in this whole world, even not your twin sister or twin brother, not like you. And that is the compassion of the Lord, that He has made you so unique. And you have never loved yourself. Contemplate on it. Contemplate on this thought. Somebody is asking a question.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Abhay Bedi. I'm coming from Mumbai. I just landed in New Delhi last evening. I got a message through our Oneness University sort of network that there is an event going on here, and I'm glad to be here, to be a part of such leaders, great leaders, industrialists like Mr. Naveen Jindal, and as well as politicians and leaders like Dr. Shashi Tharoor. But here, I would like to give my perspective, I'm just 28 years old, and I've been fortunate to get good education, because that was, my family gave me a technical education. I went to the best business schools in the world. But again, coming back to one thing which we learned from Oneness University is, and I didn't get that in any of the schools, is to see ourselves, and that itself, by seeing ourselves, liberates us from most of our problems which we face in everyday world. And Sri Amma Bhagavan helps us seeing ourselves, and that has solved my problem. I'm sure any woman or man can also get out and get liberated from that, and maybe some of their mental blocks gets relieved, and they get liberated from the current issues. And again, coming back to the point, it's your inner world which reflects outside. So I just thought I should put a point here.
Thanks for that. In fact, we've of course now managed to talk about the spirit and the politicalism. as well. So I think that really throws the floor open in terms of any questions anybody would have, any points you want to raise, because we seem to have panelists that are very diversified over here. Anything that you would like to bring up when we're talking about empowerment and women as well? Please go ahead. Hi. Yes.
What I want us to do today, all the women here, let's take an oath that we will empower our families, the women in families, our mothers-in-law, our daughters-in-law, and not come in their way if they're rising above the family, whatever the traditions are. Let them rise above, empower them, help them. That way, we don't need men to do that. Mostly women are the ones who are putting them down.
I want to just say one thing to that. It's a fantastic thought, and if really we're able to do it. But one more thought which emanates from what you're saying. I always feel that whatever women do, they must do it twice well. You know why? They must do it twice well, so that they are thought they are half as good as men. And luckily, it's not difficult.
I think that's a great point. Start at home.
I don't agree with you at all on this. As having a very negative attitude towards it. Why does, we don't see women or men differently, even from my experience in working in a corporate. Women also work, you said, you do it twice and it is to become half as good. I don't think people think like that. Maybe some people do, but I think most people don't. Everyone has a very open view on these things. There is no difference between men and women. Depends on what kind of a work, what kind of a role you're playing.
Navinji, I'm sure you're a very equal and a very equality-oriented boss, and hats off to you for being that. But all these experiences are experiences of women who themselves, for example, in corporate jobs. You will come to a situation, and I'm sure there are lots of people, entrepreneurs, people in the corporate sector, for the same job, what a man is paid, I'm just talking in pure economic terms, and what a woman is paid, you will find more often than not it is unequal.
But Mr. Patil, we've seen this in the United States of America, we talk about the wages per dollar over there. So this is something that unfortunately is something that we've been dealing with, and the more we see women in corporate America, the more this conversation is coming out there. Unfortunately, that's going to be our benchmark in terms of corporate participation. I just read this book, as I was mentioning, which was a book from the CEO of Facebook. Sheryl Sandberg talks about leaning in. So, of course, she's talking about a very niche audience, and she's talking about a very sort of niche segment of society that's very privileged, that also seems to have the right resources to go ahead. But one of her larger arguments is about how women are stopping themselves. They are the ones who are sitting in corporate rooms. It's not about 3% representation in a Fortune 500 sort of set of companies. It's about what is it that's stopping you. Is it the fact that you're going to have your children that makes you start slowing down 10 months before you even get pregnant? Is it the fact that you think you're going to sound stupid when you're sitting in a room of men? So there are various issues. We've talked about grassroots level development. We've talked about cultural issues. So I think they're different segments, different sectors. You yourself have talked about the kind of empowerment you've seen on the rural front. How perhaps different? Ironically, some girl sitting in Delhi may feel much more oppressed than someone who's sitting in some gaon somewhere with, much more authority in terms of the resources that she did.
So finding
it's
power,
a very different.
It's finding power beyond measure within yourself. It's not being fear. It's not the fear of being judgmental, but it's actually the fear that we have within your own self to find that measure of that comparative judgmentalism.
And that's where I think, to be fair to Mr. Jindal, who's sitting here, and I sort of heard everything from, Khap panchayats and women's rights and everything else. I think he's also bringing up a valid point, which is that it does vary across this country. Now, this is where the women in this audience I would like to, sort of bring in, because you've heard such a varied lot of arguments today. You've talked about Ms. Sahai, I believe. You've sort of talked about how that empowerment and that freedom starts at home. Go back home, make a difference to your daughter-in-law's life. That's something that's very valuable in this country, especially. Are there any other thoughts? What are some of the issues that you want to connect?
Yeah,
hello. Yeah, hello. Yeah, sorry.
Hello.
Yeah.
Please give her a mic. It's a very important.
2% of land assets only are owned by women today in this country. Flo commissioned a study. I'm Archana Gupta, I'm the Vice President of Flo. Flo commissioned a study where they found that at the small scale and mid-level entrepreneurs, only 4% of the enterprises are run by women. Women are 50% of the population. Now, this shows that there is, obvious or hidden discrimination against women, because otherwise I think all of us acknowledge that there are no basic differences in intellect or abilities. I think the government needs to take a very strong, we can empower ourselves. For example, if you have a women's safety issue, a solution of course is to empower the women and teach everybody to go and never mind what the rest of the government has to. But the government has a role to play. For example, in women's safety, besides empowering the women, they need to train police forces, they need to sensitize police. They need to do a lot of other things in the environment to create women's safety. Similarly, I think to create women's economic participation to a much greater extent, the government needs to take certain active steps to create special, maybe helping out in, create reservations in government purchase, maybe some tax benefits, maybe just remove transfer tax on property. So a lot of property would be registered in the name of women. It's only see, the thing is, the low economic control also leads to a lot of discrimination. If we increase women's control over assets and funds, you will automatically see improvement. So I would like to ask that what is the government planning to do in terms of reservation and affirmative action to improve women's participation?
Okay, firstly you said that only very little land is in the name of women. So most state governments, they do have actually differential policies. If the property is registered in women's name, they have to pay a lower stamp duty. So government only can do so much. I think in most states, if it's in the name of women, then it's 4 to 5%. If it's in the name of man, then it's 7 to 8%. So that kind of advantage government is already giving in many states. Then, if you remember just the last budget, Mr. Chidambaram had announced a special bank, which will and also earmarked 1,000 crores for it, which would encourage only women entrepreneurs. And loans would be given to them. And then it's a good idea, I think what you said, if property and other things are transferred in the names of women, then they should be exempt from taxes. So one can look at this also.
But is there going to be resistance to that? Because this is not a new issue at all. We talk about property and sort of.
But see, it depends on.
Unfortunately, this is something that comes up again and again. And just a little bit, Naveen, on the women's bank itself, I think forget my opinion. What was controversial about that was that many said that why do we actually need a women's bank? Why aren't women actually feeling empowered when they go into a normal bank? Why should we actually have this? Why are we at this stage that you have a separation in terms of gender when it comes to something as basic as microfinance?
I'll answer that.
So just tell me a little bit more about.
See, Fatima, if you don't do something, then say why you're not doing it.
So
if you do something, then you ask why you're doing this. Right? Okay. So I mean, if you don't make a separate bank, then why have you not done it? So and what matters is all of you. I mean, most of you are women here. How you want to do, how you want to deal in your family. Should the government dictate that you do this, or that is a matter of your own family? So that is also then, if the government starts saying that no, do this, do that, then somebody will say, why is the government interfering in my family? How I want to deal with the situation? I think it's a personal issue, and I think some things only happen gradually. We can't change overnight. Things have only been going, I feel, in the right direction. Women are more and more empowered. Even in your own family, even in our own family that we see, women are getting more empowered. The amount of empowerment that was there for my sister, now for my daughter is much more. So I think some things happen in the society. Government can't dictate these things. They have to evolve.
Can I just bring in people from the floor here, because there are a lot of women who are representatives from business families. Can I just go to someone who hasn't spoken and then I will come back?
Usually of the education sector, and I have
happen to have worked in Kurukshetra. In fact, I have been getting papers out, especially working on empowerment of women in Punjab. So this has been an ongoing process, and I do it every 5 years. Yes, there has been major changes. Women have managed to get a lot of empowerment, but I know of cases over there where there was a sarpanch, a woman sarpanch. She was beaten up at home, and she used to go out, go for meetings, come back again, get beaten up, and no one in the village really kept her. More than that, in Kurukshetra, it's one of the worst districts where female feticide is concerned. So I don't know what has been done about it. Because if you see the figures, and when we talk of education and we say we are empowering people through education, we find that the more educated the people are, female feticide does not increases.
We see that as it is.
Yeah, it does.
May I respond to this? Firstly, the woman sarpanch who gets beaten up at home, has she filed a complaint to the police?
Not ready.
Okay, you give me a complaint. I will get an FIR registered. Okay? Have you filed a complaint to the police? So see, telling about something, somebody beating his wife in a conference like this is not going to help. What is going to help is if you actually made a complaint to the police and then the police didn't do something, I'll ensure that those officers get suspended. One second, Fatima. So please write a complaint. You give me your name and everything. I will ensure that you write a complaint to the police. Okay, and I will ensure and tell everyone that action is taken on that. But if that lady herself denies that no, I don't get beaten up, then what the police will do? Okay, so that is one. And as far as female feticide in Kurukshetra, yes, I am not proud of those numbers. I can't say about female feticide because there are no known numbers of female feticide. The sex ratio, yes, is poor. Was poor in Kurukshetra, but if you see in the last 10 years, it has improved. It has improved in Kurukshetra also, it has improved in Kaithal also. And the villages where it has improved, in fact there are villages in my constituency where there are more number of girl child than boys. And we have given them special reward, and we have done much more work for those villages also. So we must also see what is the good thing happening. I think what is wrong with us, all the time, whatever is negative somewhere, all the time beating upon those things, that is negative, and just keep pulling each other down. So we also have to see the brighter side of life. We also have to see what are good things that are happening and do more of those.
Yeah. Just one thing, what Naveenji said was very interesting and correct, that wanting the government to take decision on also matters of personal resolve. But having said that, as I said about the award, actually there are state governments who have incentivized the protection and the survival of the girl child. And various state governments have gone. Ladli Lakshmi Yojana in Madhya Pradesh has become a big the Ladli campaign probably in Delhi. So it's not that the government is not doing it, but I want to bring back the focus to just one really little thing, Fatima, just in 5 seconds. We are all women here. I'm not married, but my mother brought me up, so did my father. I'm the only child, right? And I came from a very gender equal family. I was more tomboyish and more aggressive and God knows more of a gunda than most of the other people, around me. And why I was that? And this is not an example that I'm playing out. We are all sitting here and fantastic what ma'am said. If we take the resolve as women ourselves, it's the same beautiful mentorship mentee program that I think Flo for years has been talking about. If we go to a village, work with the sarpanch, let me tell you, women leaders are role models. They are role models whether they get elected at the village sector units, whether they become MLAs, whether they become MPs, whether they become councillors, whether they become president of powerful bodies like Flo. And if these role models will continue, it's a continuum, it's development and great resolve and continuum. If there was a beautiful line of National Literacy Mission, I remember each one.
Yeah.
If we could even, all of us, one person each, if we could do, and of course take it as a resolve, then it's a long playing story. It's not a 1 month empowerment situation. If we could do that, probably governments and politicians and entrepreneurs and so many other people will also benefit from it. My work down the line, minus the political bit, also has to do theatre with women. That's how I used to work for empowerment as far as they were concerned since years. So what I'm saying is that yes, a convergence is required between policy making and very, very violent, vitriolic things which happen with women. But the middle ground is the individual, which is the woman. She also has to be the mediator in this situation.
I think that's a very valid point. Again, we're hearing this, that these things really start with your own self-confidence and leadership as well. I just want to bring this to the women who are here, because I don't think it's that easy to listen to four people speak for hours, and we're about to wrap this up. So, any other sort of thoughts that you have on this, in terms of what Ms. Tripathi has also said right now, which is that she comes from a very generally equal background. She's also looked at life in a certain way and gone about it in a certain way. How do some of the women in this room feel about taking on such responsibility? Is that realistic? Is it practical? I'd just like to hear a few thoughts on that. Perhaps some people that I haven't heard from, please. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
So I'm Kamal Chuk. I just come to Mr. Nanaji. You are speaking about spiritualism. Spiritualism, everybody can't be spiritual, but spiritualism has different qualities, good value system if you have. And then you said about love yourself. Love yourself means self-respect. Every woman should have self-respect who wants to be empowered, otherwise nobody can help her. And then she said, okay, it's a very good thing if we become the role models, and most of us are role models here, to come to know. We have done so much to help our beneficiaries. I have done in many states. And they are doing so well when I go and do some follow-up, or in here in Delhi also. One of the bastis where 90% or 95% are of one community. You just go and see the difference in those communities. Because we are dedicated, everybody has to be dedicated if we want to empower others. We are empowered ourselves, I think everybody agrees. So we have to put effort and we have to be role models that so that only we can change that, make the difference in our society. And then our women, village women also, they are being empowered. I think I have read somewhere a few days back some news item that even cups are changing. They are changing their laws because of the government help. This is what I want to say, that we all, these people, ladies, village women or our beneficiaries or other women to be empowered. Then we can progress.
I would like to say a few words here. Now, I'll make some shocking statements. Please don't mind making me some shocking statements. Now, your empowerment will be to see your negative side. Everyone has got a positive side and a negative side. So, you seeing your positive side is not going to help anyway. A fool is one who wants to see only the positive side, and an intelligent one is the one who sees his negative side, and then from there he grows. So the first point which I would like to mention here is, I must see that I am not patient. I must see that I don't really have that compassion. I must see how jealous I am. I must see how easily I get hurt. So this is also called the negative teaching. That is when you will become internally or inner, there will be inner integrity. Now from there growth begins. So when you want to do some work for the people, then it should start with compassion, it should come with love. Everyone talks about love. They say that you should love everybody, you should be happy, you should not hurt. Now here at Oneness we say a totally different thing, where we say never try to love anybody. Never try to love anybody, never try not to hurt, because you are naturally not having that love, and you are naturally not having that, you naturally get hurt because you have a self. That's the truth. Face the truth. Where you have to start is, you have to see that I don't have love. I don't have gratitude. I don't have gratitude to my parents, because where do I keep my parents? My parents are in one corner of the house. I have provided an air-conditioned room. I have given him so many things. So you are fine. If you don't do that, you feel guilty. So out of guilt you have done. It's not out of gratitude. Of course, you do have gratitude also, you do have love also. But in many areas where you do not have that gratitude and you do not have that love, start there, start from where you are. So when you see that I don't have love or I don't have gratitude, that is gratitude. That is love. Not that I have love and I have gratitude. Not for the self-righteous, but for the sinners the Lord comes. So, when you start from there and when you are going on to your work, then when you feel agitated and you feel irritated with those people and you see that you are not having patience, at that time you must come in touch with your suffering and you should see, you should have be authentic to yourself. And when you do that, you become helpless. You will not like it. Whatever I am telling you, you will not like it. But that's the starting point, because that's what you are. So from there, you seek the divine's help. Being helpless because you are not that. When somebody slaps you, how can you love him? Foolish. You say, if somebody slaps you, you show the others. That's not you. It's Ramana Maharshi, it's not you. And you are not Ramana Maharshi. So if you start internal growth, if it happens, then you start your social growth. Otherwise you should not. Because you will dump your concepts into them. What does the mother do when the small child is crying? The child has fallen down, it tumbles over a stone and his foot is bleeding. Then the mother says, beta, mat rona, uske baad wo beta band nahi karta rona. Then what does the mother say? The mother says, अच्छा वो पत्थर की गलती है, ठाई एक पत्थर के मारा. Then what the child stops. Then what did you teach? What did the mother teach the child? The mother taught, you are not at fault. The stone is at fault. That's what you are taught. So the child is very tender. You are programming the child, you are conditioning the child with your own concepts. Why did the mother tell that? Because the mother is getting frustrated. She wants the child to stop. So what did the mother do? The mother said, that is at fault. Then the child stopped. So you are taught that the other is at fault. When you grow up also, you will never accept your mistakes. You are conditioned. The unconscious has been programmed. Consciously you understand, you talk, whatever you talk about, very nice things we talk. But then your unconscious is you. You are not the conscious. What you show yourself is not true. What you are inside is your unconscious, which has been programmed in your childhood before 6 years. And what happened in the mother's womb? That is what is your unconscious. So sorry, I am taking 2 more minutes to explain this concept. Then the mother has taught one more thing. When somebody is at fault, hit that, take revenge. You don't need school education, classroom and board education, not necessary. The mother is already teaching the concepts and your wrong concepts are already going in. Now, after some time, what will happen is, whatever problems we are facing, we are passing it on to our children. The teachers have to be educated. The teachers, it's not just conscious education, not at the conscious level, but it should be a process. A transformation in the teachers, not a reformation. Teaching with a smile is not enough. The smile has to be within, inside the heart. For that, you must go into the negative side of you. So that will be my answer, ma'am, for you.
One final thought.
Just very quickly, if there's anyone who wants to put in a few more words, because we are actually wrapping up this session right now. I believe it's almost 2 o'clock. Yeah, please go ahead. Can we get a mic from her, please? Because I don't think anyone.
Hi, I'm Harjinder. I'm the board member of Flow. I sort of want to share one experience. Fatima, you said to share the experiences. I'm from the corporate world and I started my business on my own. Over all the years of my experience in business, what I can say is when it comes to real business, it doesn't matter whether you are a man or a woman. You know, nobody pulls you down if you are a woman. Nobody gives you that extra edge or extra mileage that you are a woman. What matters is how competent you are, right? So this is one thing that I want to say, that if you are competent, you will get anywhere you want to get in. And second thing, I also want to talk about the glass ceiling which you talked about, so-called glass ceiling. I don't think that exists anymore in the corporate world now, right? I don't agree with that. Because as far as I am concerned, I feel I make a conscious effort of employing more women in my organization because I feel they perform better. They're more dedicated. I don't know what's your take on that.
Can I just ask you a question? Did you say you started your own business?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and I think what you're saying is great, because we've sort of heard about how that glass ceiling is something that's very well disputed right now. But I do think there's a difference in the experiences that women who start their own businesses have versus the ones who work in organizations that are perhaps more traditional and have had more sort of linear and older sort of hierarchies. So I think there is a difference in terms of how a business entrepreneur, her experience.
Maybe it doesn't happen in my organization because I am a woman.
No, that's what I'm saying. So
and
I
always
you're someone. In fact, the fact that you have gone ahead and now use the fact that you have that position to employ more women. I mean, how, what are you seeing in terms of how that is working out in your organization? Do you feel there's a difference in the way the leadership?
A lot. The women, with the work they do, is more, more with dedication. They're more loyal to the organization, and there's more quality work. As far as I have seen in my own.
This really is indicative of the awareness level that you had to create absolute equality and absolute equitable situation. And that's exactly what we are trying to attempt to say here, the awareness of the fact that some places it would be equal. I'm sure Naveenji, what he was saying, would be a equal person with his colleagues and the people who work with him. Similarly, you, not just because you're a woman and you have your own business, there was an awareness level. And really this awareness is actually the subconscious awareness. Till we don't scratch the surface, we don't get to know, because there are so many stories. And they're not just stories, they're lived in realities. And one is not encapsulating them here to create a fear or a threat that this is what happens. But it is true, and because it is true, we need to probably even look at it in a more sort of comprehensive fashion, how it should not become true henceforth. So basically, it's
right.
It does.
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the realities are different.
That's what the truth, it encapsulates
the fact that I've started my own entrepreneur as a woman, but I cannot afford to have too many women in those positions. So it is all depends. So I'm not talking about being unequal or being biased or anything like that, but it also depends on the nature of work. So as long as we look at them equally in other terms.
So I think Mr. Jindal wanted to talk about something very quickly, and then we're just going to quickly wrap the session.
Okay, just Namita ji, just my final words on empowerment. We are as empowered as we think we are empowered. Okay, in India, as far as role models go, till a year ago, we had a woman president of the country. Okay, Pratibha Patil ji. Our Speaker of the Lok Sabha is a woman. Our Chairperson of UPA is a woman. President of Congress Party is a woman. The head of my family, my mother, an MLA, she is a woman. Chief Minister of Delhi is a woman. Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu is a woman. Chief Minister of the largest state in India till a year ago, Mayawati was a woman. So we have a lot of empowered women. My wife asked her, she is very, very empowered.
Head of Fiji is a woman. I'm sorry, but this argument about this one's a woman and the chief minister is a woman and the Congress president is a woman, I'm afraid that I have to see on the end. It doesn't work for every woman who perhaps has.
No, I know it doesn't work, but these are only saying these are role models. These are exceptions. These are cases, but then I mean, if they weren't there, would it be better? So let's again look at the brighter side. America's never had a woman president. India's had. Okay, so these are the examples I'm giving. So I mean, and then so many, all of you women over here, I'm sure all of you are very empowered women. And secondly, a lady there had said about Kurukshetra. I just remember now. Kurukshetra has been ranked #1 in the sex ratio improvement by the Department of Women and Child Development, Haryana. If you see, then please, when you speak in a company, you must note that Kurukshetra has been ranked #1 in sex ratio improvement. Thank you.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Garima, I just want to say one last thing, and it's again a couplet. Can I have a great lover of poetry? And why is it a couplet? Because these are stories, these are like dastan. So many dastans, so many stories. So my final take is only one, and it's a beautiful couplet by Nazir Akbarabadi, one of my favorite poets. कुछ इस तरह से कारवां के साथ चल नज़ीर, कुछ इस तरह से कारवां के साथ चल नज़ीर, अगर तू न चल सके तो तेरी दास्तां चल.
Okay, on that note, we are closing the event as far as before lunch is concerned. I just want to say that I had the best role in here because I just got a chance to ask all the questions and then suddenly take sides randomly, change my position every 5 minutes, but that's what's great about being an anchor. I just want to say that I really enjoyed this. I think we've talked about, leadership and empowerment, as to say, such a vast topic, and the experiences are so different for women across levels. I just want to thank my panelists as well as everybody who participated in this, and I certainly look forward to more of these events. I hope that you were satisfied as well with the way